Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest episode in our video series, Home Care Hot Seat. Today I'm joined by Neil Eastwood, social care recruitment specialist and founder and CEO of the employee referral app Care Friends. Okay, so welcome Neil. Thank you again so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. So you officially launched your employee referral app back in June. Could you explain to our listeners how the app works exactly?
Yeah, absolutely. So the app is all built around employee referrals, and the principles behind it are that employee referrals are the best source of high performers and long stayers in any social care role, including nursing. And so what the app does is try to improve and remove friction from an employee referral scheme. So we know there's lots and lots of potential where staff want to recommend their friends. They do know people with the right values, who could make excellent members of the care workforce. It's just the process. They often forget that they're meant to recommend people, and it's a pain to do it. And sometimes they don't get paid and they have to wait too long to get paid. So I felt the app, using gamification, so using points as a kind of currency, and rewarding people for the effort of recommending their friend in the first place, so outreach to them applying, them having a successful interview, that could really remove a lot of these issues that we had that were holding back this high potential. And the whole purpose of it really is to grow the care workforce with high quality people that are going to stay, so we can start reducing the staff turnover rates and improving everything for everybody.
Okay, so what's your background exactly, and what inspired you to launch Care Friends?
I guess the early background for why I'm here at all is probably because my father was a vicar, and I was brought up in the 70s in a kind of in a vicarage, and everything was about helping the community. And so I think the church then had a bigger role in social care. So that kind of never left me as a kind of wanting to help society thing. And then 10 or 11 years ago, I joined from healthcare. I joined Allied Healthcare, which of course I thought at the time, oh, it's just another healthcare company, but actually it turned out it was Dom Care. So that was really my experience of joining the care sector. And there they had a very high staff turnover, and that was the trigger for me looking at recruitment and retention more generally, was to think, what can we do to fix this?
Right, and so that inspired you then to launch the app. I first heard about the app back during a Land Buisson conference back in May last year, when you were talking about it on stage. How long has the app been in the making, and what work has gone into preparing for the launch since then?
Yeah, and probably people will look at this externally and think, oh, you come up with the idea and then it's a perfectly formed thing that's suddenly launched. It's definitely not like that. I mean, I was going to write a book on, don't ever launch an app, because it's been an excruciating experience. But the initial idea, so I was doing some advisory work for the Department of Health and Social Care and on the national recruitment campaign #1, and of course there the focus is very much on kind of publicity using big media channels and Facebook and so on, and I felt there was another piece missing, which is using these passive invisible networks of staff. So that was really the trigger for it, was a kind of springtime in 2018, and then we actually started testing what's called an MVP, a minimum viable product, a really basic prototype of the app, with a home care provider. One of Surrey Care Association were really supportive of us at the beginning, and so they put us in contact with some of the providers to help. So we started a pilot with home care then, and then we, on the basis of the success there, we won EU funding. And so then we went to Cornwall. So we partnered with CASC, the Cornwall training partnership down in Cornwall, and we did a wider pilot in Cornwall, and then we went more widely. And then at the same time, Skills for Care got involved, and we were very supportive in terms of developing it. And we launched in partnership with them in June this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I didn't realise you partnered with Skills for Care quite early on. Then I thought it was quite recent.
Yeah, I've been talking to them. I mean, they've been sort of a really good sounding board all the way through the process, because obviously they have deep understanding of the sector, and so they were very helpful from very early on.
Okay, great. So what feedback have you had from the providers who were involved with these early pilot schemes?
Well, I mean, of course, I always want everyone to love everything, and we didn't have that. I mean, a good example is that I made a lot of mistakes, and I put a lot of emphasis on too much emphasis on the app itself and the user experience for care workers, and we got care workers involved in that. And what I forgot really was that the recruiters and the managers have to use the management portal to manage this, and I really hadn't given that side much thought at all. So when in the early pilots, what we found was the care workers loved it, but the recruiters and the managers were like, well, it's quite difficult to use, and of course they have too much going on already. So I realized, with horror, we completely forgotten that group of stakeholders. So we rapidly addressed that, and that got better. And we have, like, I think everyone listening will be familiar with technology having bugs. We had so many bugs in the pilot, and you have to wash your dirty laundry publicly, of course. It has to happen. So I'm very, very grateful to the Surrey Care Association members that tested it, and then the Cornish providers that tested it, and then others more widely, because they've been very patient with us, and you just have to go through that process of falling over, getting up, fixing things, and yeah, it's been a journey.
So could you explain in more detail how exactly you tweaked the app so it could work for the recruiters and the managers?
Yeah, so we originally didn't really think much about how a manager or recruiter would use it. So in many cases, they're busy people who are not sitting in front of a screen all the time. So often they'd come back to the portal at the end of the day and have to sort of update where all the referrals have got to. So one important part of the app is the communication back to the referrer to tell them what's happening with their friend who's been referred. And that was one of the big problems before, is no one ever heard. So I recommended Sarah, but I don't know what's happening. So they were then quite late to updating. So what we did lots of improvements to remove the number of clicks that they had to do. But at the same time, we have moved a lot of the functionality onto the phone. So if they have the Care Friends app, it knows they're a recruiter or a manager, and they can manage the candidate straight off their phone. And that is starting to look like a really popular thing.
Okay. So Bluebird Care recently announced the rollout of the Care Friends app across its network. What does that mean to you as an entrepreneur? It must feel great.
Well, I mean, going back many years, I lived in Petersfield, very close to where Paul Tarsi started Bluebird Care, in an office above a shop, and I was busy driving off up to Stoke to Stafford to work in allied healthcare. So I've had a kind of connection with Bluebird Care from their beginnings. So personally, it was a very important win from that point of view. I think also, I'm delighted that we can bring on board all of the offices, and includes Ireland as well, of course. And we are piloting the app in Australia this year, and Ireland, is another important market. So that's all really good. And I think what it also does is it sends a message out to other providers that perhaps have thought, well, this is an interesting bit of technology, but it would indicate, that obviously someone's looked at this in detail. Bluebird Care offices are piloted for a year. They wouldn't be making this decision if they had uncertainty about it. So I think it's really good that will give more people reassurance that this is something that could really help them too.
I know you mentioned Ireland and New Zealand, Australia. Are you in talks to partner with any other providers here in the UK?
Yes, so we had when Skills for Care announced the launch for us in June, we had about 500 providers inquire, and we've had obviously more and more since then. So there's a whole range of providers of all sizes that are interested. Obviously, we have a kind of booking system, so I think there'll be lots more announcements through the rest of this year and next year, and yeah, some really big ones. But you know, most of the sector is smaller providers, and that's obviously, you know, our focus as well.
You can't name any names.
But I will come to you with whoever they are, of course. When
Appreciate that. Thank you. So you previously said that your the referral app referral, employee referral, is the #1 source of quality recruitment. Why is that the case?
So, I mean, there's a range of reasons why employee referrals actually are the highest quality source in any sector at all, but particularly in social care. We're looking for something different. We're looking for something extra that isn't on a CV. So using existing staff who understand what the job is and the challenges of the job, and they will know people who they feel have the right values, who are not necessarily actively looking and therefore being chased by every other provider and perhaps other non-care sector employers. So there's an element of kind of screening that happens and selection of people for their values. Also, what happens is the existing member of staff tells them about the downsides and the challenges of social care, as well as the upsides. So a good example might be personal care. So they would convincingly explain, look, you know, this is part of the job, but it's not really an issue at all, for example. Whereas if that hadn't happened, which usually it wouldn't do if you were just applying to join for the first time and you didn't know, then people leave quickly, often because they felt, oh, you never mentioned this, or this isn't right for me. So I think there's that those are the things that would mean that employee referrals are one of definitely the best source of staff.
Okay. And how can the app help providers retain their staff, particularly during the pandemic, when, you know, when furloughed employees have moved from other sectors into the care sector?
Yeah, so there's kind of a couple of ways the app helps. I mean, firstly, by bringing people in who are the recommendations of the staff means they're more likely to stay. So we've seen a much improved staff turnover in the first 6 months from referrals. So bringing in this kind of, and it won't be everybody, but bringing in a kind of a bedrock of high quality, long staying people, which stabilizes your staff turnover, is one thing. And then the app has a whole nother side to it, which wasn't my idea at all, but in the first pilot, the owner of the home care business suggested to us, why can't we give Care Friends points for other things? And so we've built that in now, and that's become a huge success, which is the ability for the manager to give bonus points to recognise good work, to recognise an accomplishment like 2 years service or completing training, and also as an incentive to get people perhaps to pick up a sudden drop shift or something. And the ability to instantly recognise someone with a push notification on their phone, wherever they are out there, whether they're on shift or not, it is a really important way of building in appreciation, personal appreciation into kind of the day-to-day work of a care worker, and that means, you know, a tighter, more engaged workforce, which will reduce staff turnover.
Okay, thank you. And statistics show that most care staff, as you know, leave between acceptance and starting, and then in the first 90 days of starting in a role. What are your tips then for, you know, how providers can minimise that voluntary turnover?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly if you look at any staff turnover profile, then you see it's worst at the very beginning of employment. But actually there is this piece from job offer to hire that is never really measured. And those providers that have looked at those statistics often could be losing 40% of people in that period. So I think there are things you can do. Certainly keeping people informed is one of the big issues. I mean, now for those of us in England, we've got fast track DBS, so that's helping and squeeze the time a bit. But certainly when they join, one of the biggest benefits I've seen is having a peer mentoring program, which is kind of one of the elements of employee referral, is you have a friend there who's a kind of friendly ear to support you. And it's actually taking that understanding and building it out to be a peer mentoring or buddying scheme for the whole workforce. So in the first 90 days, that's the single most successful thing you can do. I think the boss saying welcome on day one is incredibly powerful too. So these are simple things that don't cost money that you can do in that period of time.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure our readers will Appreciate those tips. And skills for the care data shows as well that there's quite a high level of churn in the sector as well. So how can that be minimised?
Well, I think again,
or prevented, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Or prevented, even.
Or prevented, yeah. Well, I mean, again, I don't want to appear that referrals are the answer to everything, but if you do look at, I think we have to look at the way we recruit, and there is an over-reliance on one source, often internet job boards, and I would still use internet job boards, but I feel that many providers over-rely on that one source, and you get people there often looking for a job and not necessarily a calling for care. So we do know that you have to triage much harder with people coming through those kind of digital channels. So I think one of the things that could be done is just to diversify more. And obviously, as of right now, it's difficult. Face-to-face things and outreach in the community become more challenging. But the more you can bring in referrals and word of mouth, we know that those two things together represent half of all high performers in social care. So I think the more that recruiters and managers can emphasize those two, the more you will see staff turnover reduce.
Okay, so there's still a place for job boards, in your opinion?
Oh, absolutely is. I mean, I would definitely use them. It's just, I think it's too easy perhaps for recruiters to kind of lean on those as a single source. And you should always reflect and say, how many, we need diversity. So we need to have candidates coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, and so the difference with referrals and outreach is that those people are often not considering a career in social care until someone suggests you would be amazing. We want those people as well as people who are actively looking for a job.
Okay. And what is your opinion on the new immigration rules? It's quite a tough question. And how this will affect care recruitment going forward. And does the UK have any hope of employing enough domestic carers rather than relying on migrants, as the government now wants to do?
Yes, so the government has said, I believe, that they would like employers to be investing in the domestic workforce. And my question is, investing with what money? So we haven't solved the whole funding thing, and I believe there is some progress there. But I mean, generally, I am not a fan of, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, of the immigration points-based system and the way it treats social care. I think there is, as been said before, a misunderstanding about what is low skilled and what is very skilled but low paid. And if you look at the impact of it, I'm fearful. Of course, we may get a U-turn, and people might reflect in government on perhaps this is not a good decision, particularly for London and the South East. I mean, overall, there's 17% of adult social care jobs are from non-British people who would identify as non-British nationals, and probably 8% EU, which is really what's being affected here. But if you look at London, it's a huge impact. In London particularly, we'll feel this badly. And London has double the number almost of 0 hours contracts. It's and a very high migrant workforce. So I think it's really worrying. Is there hope for us to recruit from the domestic workforce? Well, I mean, I think in London, I don't think we can ever replace, however hard we recruit and however clever we are, and maybe Care Friends has a role to play in that. So I really hope that that the government changes its mind over what I believe is a mistaken policy. Obviously, the further you go outside of London, then it's more possible to engage the domestic workforce. But to be honest, if you look at the COVID period, when social care was one of the only sectors that continued to recruit, Indeed has told us that the clicks on job ads for care assistants only went up 15% pre-COVID to kind of May time, mid-COVID 1, I guess, and when other sectors shot up. So we do have a problem here with engaging the domestic workforce. And so, although I want to be an optimist about it, I really think they need to change the point system.
So finally, what are your absolute no-nos when it comes to care recruitment?
Oh. Well, there are quite a few. I think the first one would be a lack of acknowledgement of the application. So if someone takes the time to apply, they should hear either way if they're rejected or not. And I think I do understand that recruiters and managers are very busy and it's very difficult, but we are recruiting very locally. And if you ignore somebody who's taken the time to apply, they will not speak well of social care and not speak well of you locally as a brand. So that's the first thing. I think it's really important. You know, we've made some really good strides. If you can look for kind of benefits or upsides to what's happened to us this year, is that we've digitized the recruitment process, and that has on balance helped. But we always need to be cautious that we don't remove the human touch and the ability to build a relationship and listen to someone's story for why they want to join the social care workforce. So that, I think, is an important thing to keep hold of, however digital we go. I think relying on a CV is problematic to me, because we're looking for things that just aren't on a CV. And people often, one of the biggest markers of success in social care is having family care experience, having cared for a loved one in some capacity. And particularly with younger people, where they've cared for a parent or they've been brought up by grandparents, we see this time and time again. And often people are shy and feel like that's a negative on a CV. So we should not rely on purely on CVs to make a decision. I think that's important. And as I mentioned, keeping diversifying the recruitment sources so we don't over rely, particularly on internet job boards. We need to diversify those sources. And I think finally, keeping people updated. So when you're in the funnel, tell them what's going on. And I know that's difficult to do often, but we've seen real successes where the recruitment process has built in, you know, regular, timely communication. It's just courteous to do.